the rat.
And I'm at the hour? Why am I down here? I wasn't down here, I'm meant to be down here. I'm not meant to come down here anymore, man. Hey, Nazca, hello, welcome in. Good to have you. What am I doing down here? Shouldn't be down here. Certainly I should not be down there, no. Do you ever worry that... I don't think I'm sleepwalking. I don't think I was asleep. I was talking to you just a couple of minutes ago in chat. You ever feel like you're going crazy? It's fine. I just won't go into the book. It's fine. It's fine. It's nothing. It's just. Oh, maybe I'm overworking myself. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe I'm not sleeping enough. Anyway. But it's not about me right now. It's about you guys. Sadnar, thank you for the 3 stream streak. Welcome in. Good to have you. I genuinely appreciate it more than I can say. Wow. Lovely to have you. So, yeah, welcome in. Welcome into yourself. Welcome to Abbe. Welcome to Alaska. And of course, speaking of Abbe, first things first we've got to do today is go on over to here and mark. That makes 27. Well, I'm doing pretty good, all told. Just it's a little bit of wandering here. Mine's wandering a bit, but I'm doing good. Hope work's not too bad. Happy to have you, even if you're just lurking, or even if you're just stopping by for a second. I do appreciate it. Yeah. Even they sell nothing. All is nothing, and they know it. And they pretend. Sorry, oh, something in my throat there. Was there a bot? God, missed that. Les, welcome in. Good to have you. So, I hope it goes well for you. Ooh, I hate those bots. God, can't blink without them. God, ooh, really, I've been really getting heated about them recently. Just, ooh, yeah. I hope the rest of it goes well for you. Anyway, oh yes, so, Abbe, ooh, number 27 today. Shall we see if we go into the void more than we already have? Into the void today. Hop, number 27. Looks like we're good. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Welcome in, everyone. Welcome in. Sorry, my head's all over the place today. I don't know what's been going on. My head. Anyway, but yeah. So, what are we doing today? We are reading the book. Same thing we do all the time. There's a book. Oop, wrong screen again. So, losing it today, Lord. Yeah, maybe I do. Maybe I should eat something. Yeah. I gotta get my head on straight. Right. Yeah. So, book today, like I say, we're gonna be starting. Actually, you can see it from here. Actually, the George Orwell shelf is directly down, but underneath my little bed. So if we head down the reading, you can see where we are. But yeah, we're gonna be doing "Coming Up for Air" by George Orwell, which it's not a super long novel, but it's one of those ones that's long enough that I'm definitely not going to do it in one sitting. So this is going to be a couple of sessions probably. It's about 200 and change pages, so don't know how long exactly, but we'll see. But yeah, but as always, before we get onto our main book today, we are going to start off with a little bit of poetry. Last time we finished our collection of Woman Once Missed, and so today we'll be moving on to, I've got a collection here of Tennyson, which I've read a couple of these before, but we're just going to do, they're just going to be our sort of regular poems for a little while, because I've got quite a big book of them. So yeah, that's what we're going to start with. But yeah, let me get my head on straight. There we go. Adjust the mic. Let me adjust the microphone before we start. Yeah. So. And there's more like it, yeah? So. As we're saying, we're doing some Tennyson poetry today. And we're starting with June Bracken and Heather to Emily Tennyson. There on the top of the down, the wild heather round me and over me, dunes are blue. When I looked at the bracken so bright and the heather so brown, I thought to myself I would offer this book to you. This and my love together, to you that are 77, with a faith as clear as the eye of the June blue heaven, and a fancy as summer new as the green of the bracken amidst the gloom of the heather. Our next poem is Love's latest hour is this. Love's latest hour is this. True love from love must part. Yet ere I lose my bliss, sweet, let me feel thine heart. One kiss, one kiss, one kiss. Cling, clasp me heart to heart. One kiss I scarce can speak, and thy lips tremble now. Yet let me kiss thy cheek, let me kiss thy brow. One on thy neck, thy cheek, another on thy brow. I go, the day steals on, henceforth I hate the skies. I go, my hope is gone, yet let me kiss thine eye. I go not yet one kiss between thine eye. And sweet to stand embraced, till I grow stiff and cold, enfolding thy dear waist, which I no more shall fold. Dear lips, dear eyes, dear waist, which I no more shall fold. The world is nothing worth, here let me fall and lie. What is there else on earth, 'twere better far to die. Lay lip to lip, pluck forth my heart, that ere I die. To a lady sleeping, O thou, whose fringed lids I gaze upon, o whose dim brain the winged dream are born, unroof the shrines of clearest vision, in honour of the silver-ficked morn. Long hath the white wave of the Virgin's light driven back the billow of the dreamful dark. Thou all unwittingly prolongest night, though long ago listening to the polished lark, with eyes dropped downwards through the blue serene. Over heaven's parapets the angels lean. Whispers, 'tis not alone the warbling woods, the starred abysses of the sky, the silent hills, the stormy floods, the green that fills the eye. These only do not move the breast, like some wise artist nature gives through all her works to each that lives a hint of somewhat unexpressed. Whate'er I see, where'er I move, these whispers rise and fall away. Something of pain, of bliss, of love, but what were hard to say. I could not tell it if I could, yet every form of mind is made to vary in some light or shade. So were my tale misunderstood. You will be seeing more of me until you see nothing at all. And then the next one we got is Kate. I know her by her angry air, her bright black eyes, her bright black hair. Her rapid laughter's wild and shrill as laughter of the woodpecker from the bosom of an hill. 'Tis Kate, she saith what she will, for Kate have an unbridled tongue, clear as the twang of an harp, her heart like a throbbing star. Kate hath a spirit ever strong, like a new bow, and bright and sharp as edges of the scimitar. When shall she take her fitting mate? For Kate no common love will feel. My woman soldier, Calliant Kate, as pure and true as blades of steel. Kate saith the world is void of might. Kate saith that men are gilded flowers. Kate snaps her fingers at my vows. Kate will not hear her lover's sighs. I would I were an armoured knight, far famed for well-won enterprise, and wearing on my swarthy brows the garland of a new reefed empire. For a moment I would pierce the blackest flies of clanging flight, and strongly strike the left and right in dreaming of my lady's eyes. O Kate loves well the bold and fierce, but none are bold enough for Kate. She cannot find the fitting mate. That's the end of the time we have for poetry today. Must have been some good ones in there. I rather got caught up in them near the middle.
The rat!
Plague, welcome in. You're just in time. Our poetry is just finishing. Yeah, welcome in. I do. Anyway, but yeah, let me switch back over to our normal microphone while we while we head over to get ready for the book reading. The main. There we are. Hi, Plague. Welcome in. Good to have you. Good to have you. Oh, yeah. Yeah, welcome in. What with it? Sorry, my head's all over the place. Yeah. Can't believe losing it today, but yeah, what are we doing? So, poetry's done, so we're going back to the main book. So, main book. Yeah. I'm a little all over the place. Abba thinks I might have been sleepwalking or something. I just, I don't know. Been an odd day. Or top, but yeah. What are we doing? Oh yes. So, our main book today, which again, you can see my little perch from down here. But yeah, we're starting on Coming Up for Air by George Orwell. Let me have a quick swallow of water. Your elves. And what have I? Oh yeah, I was thinking about this earlier today. I was going to rework this. So before I start doing my normal little spiel, I want to say, if you want to do a redeem that you'd worry would otherwise be disruptive, now is a perfect time to do it. And this little reprieve before we actually start our main reading. But yeah, that being said, 15 stream streak. Well, thank you very kindly, Plague. I appreciate you being there for me. You're ever a comfort. But yeah, if you want to do a redeem you worry would be disruptive, now's a great time where you can do it at the end of chapters. But as always, while this reading is happening, if at any point you should miss something that's been said, or either because I've fumbled my words at the saying of it, because you've had some sort of technical issue, because something has distracted you, for any reason, do let me know. I'm happy to go back a page or two and just make sure you haven't missed anything. Very much want everyone to be following along. If you have thoughts, comments, questions, do feel free to let me know. I'm going to respond to them quickly in the thing, and in the fact that this is in chapters, I'll be pausing after everyone anyway, so if you have thoughts that might take a little longer to address, I'll save them for the end, but I do really welcome discussion. In fact, apparently you can earn points to Blackball for it, which is something I didn't know, but NASCAR's got one, so very much appreciated if you want to do that. Other than that, what is there to say? I think that's about all there is to say, actually, so I will take a quick swallow of water to give anyone who does want to do a redeem charm, because I'm trying to be better about that. So, your elf. And, yeah, that being said, without any further ado, if you are sitting comfortably, I will begin. Coming Up for Air by George Orwell. He's dead, but he won't lie down. Popular song. Part 1. Chapter 1. The idea really come to me the day I got my new false teeth. I remember the morning well. At about 7:45, I'd nipped out of bed, got into the bathroom just in time to shut the kids out. It were a beastly January morning with a dirty yellowish grey sky. Down below, out of the little square of bathroom window, I could see the 10 yards by 5 of grass, with a privet edge round it, and a bare patch in the middle that we call the back garden. There's the same back garden, same privets, same grass, behind every house in Ellesmere Road. Only difference, where there are no kids, there's no bare patch in the middle. I was trying to shave with a bluntest razor blade, while the water ran into the bath. My face looked back at me out of the mirror, and underneath, in a tumbler of water on the little shelf, over the wash basin, the teeth that belonged in the face. It was a temporary set that Warner, my dentist, had given me, to wear while the new ones was being made. I haven't such a bad face, really. It's one of those bricky red faces that go with butter-coloured hair and pale blue eyes. I've never gone grey or bald, thank God. When I got my teeth in, I probably don't look my age, which is 45. Making a mental note of the bar razor blades, I got into the bath and started soaping. I soaped my arms. I got those kind of pudgy arms that are freckled up to the elbow. And then took the back brush and soaped my shoulder blades, which is the ordinary way I can't reach. Which in the ordinary way I can't reach. It's a nuisance. There are several parts of my body that I can't reach nowadays. The truth is that I'm inclined to be a little bit on the fat side. I don't mean that I'm something in a sideshow, like a fair. My weight isn't much over 14 stone. Which for Americans would be 160, 222 pounds or 224 pounds. Weight isn't much over 14 stone. The last time I measured around my waist, it were either 48 or 49, I forget which. And I'm not what they call disgustingly fat. I haven't got one of them bellies that sag halfway down to the knee. It's merely that I'm a little bit broad in the beam, with a tendency to be barrel-shaped. You know the active, hearty kind of fat man? The athletic, that bouncing type, that's nicknamed Fatty or Tubby, and he's always the laughing soul of the party. I'm that type. Fatty, they mostly call me. Fatty Bowling. George Bowling is my real name. But at that moment I didn't feel like the laughing soul of the party. And it struck me that nowadays I nearly always do have a morose kind of feeling in the early mornings. Though I sleep well, my digestion's good. I knew who it were, of course. Their bloody false teeth. The things was magnified by the water in the tumbler. It was grinning at me like the teeth in a skull. Gives you a rotten feeling to have your gums meet a sort of pinched up, withered feeling. Like you're bitten into a sour apple. Besides, say what you will, false teeth are a landmark. When your last natural tooth goes, a time when you can kid yourself that you're an Hollywood chic is definitely an end. I was fat as well as 45. As I stood up to soap my crutch, I had a look at my figure. It's all right about fat men being unable to see their feet, but it's a fact that when I stand upright I can only see the front halves of mine. No woman, I thought, as I worked the soap round my belly, will ever look twice at me again, unless she's paid to. Not that at that moment I particularly wanted any woman to look twice at me. But it struck me that this morning there were reasons why I ought to have been in a better mood. To begin with, I wasn't working today. The old car in which I cover my district. I ought to tell you that I'm in the insurance business. The flying salamander, live fire, burglary, twins, shipwreck, everything. I was temporarily in dock, and though I got the look in at the London office to drop some papers, I was really taking the day off to go and fetch my new false teeth. And besides, there were another business that had been in and out of my mind for some time past. This was that I had 17 quid, which nobody else had heard about. Nobody in the family, that is. It had happened this way. A chap in our firm, Mellors by name, had got hold of a book called Astrology Applied to Horse Racing, which proved that it's all a question of the influence of the planets on the colours the jockey is wearing. Well, in some race or other there were a mare called Corsair's Bride, a complete outsider, but her jockey's colour was green, which it seemed was just the colour for the planets that happened to be in the ascendant. Mellors, who were deeply bitten with his astrology business, were putting several quid on the horse, went down on his knees to be to do the same. In the end, chiefly to shut him up, I risked 10 bob. I don't bet as a general rule. Sure enough, Corsair's Bride come home in a walk. I forget the exact odds, but my share worked out at 17 quid. That kind of instinct, rather queer and probably indicating another landmark in my life. I just quietly put the money in the bank and said nothing to anybody. I'd never done anything of this kind before. A good husband and father would have spent it on a dress for Hilda, that's my wife, and boots for the kids. But I've been a good husband and father for 15 years. I'm beginning to get fed up with it. After I'd soaked myself all over, I felt better. Laid down in the bath. What was that? Did you hear that? Yeah, am I going crazy? Oh, it's a weird day. After I soaked myself all over, I felt better. Laid down in the bath to think about my 17 quid and what to spend it on. Okay, so you did. Yeah, it's definitely weird, because that's the sound that plays when you get a message in chat, but one that hasn't happened, or rather, it doesn't play after you get the message, or rather if it has been around for not too long. And so it played, but there was no message. But then when the rest of you talked, there wasn't another ding, so maybe there was a message. Maybe we just can't. Not my night today. Not my night. Whoa. Let me have a quick drink. Whoa, get me straight. Yeah. I don't know why I'm questioning it. I live in a haunted library. Probably the ghost is trying to say something or something. I don't know. Gotta stop thinking about it. Gotta stop thinking about it. Yeah, could be. Could well be. I don't know what Lamp does to sort of set this whole stuff up, but it's a little beyond me. It's very arcane, so yeah. Sure it's nothing. Yeah. After I soaked myself all over, I felt better. Lay down in the bath to think about my 17 quid. What to spend it on? You're probably right, I bang. The alternatives, it seemed to me, was either a weekend with a woman, or dribbling it quietly away on odds and ends, such as cigars and double whiskies. I just turned on some more hot water. I'm thinking about women and cigars. And there were noise like an herd of buffalo coming down the 2 steps that led to the bathroom. I mean, I don't know. Lamp says you guys is called the spirit of the earth, so maybe you do. Maybe we's all ghosts, I don't know. I don't know. There was a noise like an herd of buffalo coming down the 2 steps that lead to the bathroom. It was the kids, of course. 2 kids in an house the size of ours, with like a quart of beer in a pint mug. There was a frantic stamping outside, and then they yelled out of agony. Dada, I want to come in. Well, you can't, clear out. But Dada, I want to go somewhere. Go somewhere else then. I'm having my bath. Dada, I want to go somewhere. Can't be asking me about that. That won't teach me magic. You have to ask him. No use. I knew the danger signal. The WC is the bathroom. It would be, of course, in a house like ours. I let the plug out of the bath and got partially dry quick as I could. As I opened the door, little Billy, my youngest, aged 7, shot past me, judging the smack which I aimed at his head. Only when I was nearly dressed and looking at her attire that I discovered my neck was still soapy. It's a rotten thing to have a soapy neck. It gives you a disgusting, sickly feeling. The queer thing is that however carefully you sponge it away, when you've once discovered that your neck is soapy, you feel sticky for the rest of the day. I went downstairs in a bad temper, ready to make myself disagreeable. Our dining room, like the other dining rooms in Ellesmere Road, is a poky little place. 14 feet by 12, maybe it's 12 by 10, on the Japanese oak sideboard, with the 2 empty decanters and a silver egg stand that Hilda's mother gave us for a wedding present. Don't leave much room. Old Hilda was glooming beside the teapot, in her usual state of alarm and dismay, because the News Chronicle had announced that the price of butter was going up or something. She hadn't lighted the gas fire, and the windows were shut, it was basically cold. I bent down and put a match to the fire, breathing rather loudly through my nose. Bending always makes me puff and blow. There's a kind of hint to her, though. She gave me the little sidelong glance she always gives me when she thinks I'm doing something extravagant. Hilda is 39. When I first knew her, she looked just like an heir. She still does, but she's got very thin and rather wizened, with a perpetual brooding, worried look in her eyes. When she's more upset than usual, she's got a trick of humping her shoulders and folding her arms across her breast, an old gypsy woman over her fire. She's one of those people who get their main kick in life out of foreseeing disasters. Only petty disasters, of course. As for wars, earthquakes, plagues, famines and other revolutions, she pays no attention there. Butter's going up, the gas bill is enormous, and the kid's boots is wearing out. There's another instalment due on the radio, that's Hilda's litany. Yep, you've been predicted, Blake. And this burst going out in 1939, that would be almost 100 years ahead of yourself. Well, foreseen. She gets what I've finally decided. It's a definite pleasure out of rocking herself to and fro with her arms across her breast and glooming at me. But George, it's very serious. I don't know what we're going to do. I don't know where the money is coming from. You don't seem to realise how serious it is, and so forth. It's fixed firmly in her head that we shall end up in the workhouse. The funny thing is that if we ever do go to the workhouse, Hilda won't mind it a quarter as much as I shall. In fact, she'll probably rather enjoy the feeling of security. The kids was downstairs already, having washed and dressed at lightning speed, as they always do, when there's no chance to keep anyone else out of the bathroom. When I got to the breakfast table, they was having an argument, which went to the tune of, "Yes you did, no you didn't, yes you did, no I didn't," and looked like going on for the rest of the morning, until I told them to cheese it. There are only two of them, Billy, aged 7, and Lorna, aged 11. It's a peculiar feeling that I have towards the kids. A great deal of the time I can hardly stick the sight of them. As for their conversation, it's just unbearable. They're at that dreary bread and butter age where a kid's mind revolves around things like rulers, pencil boxes, and who got top marks in French. Other times, especially when they're asleep, I have quite different feelings. Sometimes I've stood over their cots on summer evenings when it's light, watched them sleeping with their round faces, their tow-coloured hair, several shades lighter than mine. It's given me that feeling you read about in the Bible. It says your bowels young. At such times I feel that I'm just a kind of dried up seed pod. It doesn't matter twopence. My sole importance has been to bring these creatures into the world and feed them while they're growing. That's only at moments. Most of the time my separate existence looks pretty important to me. I feel there's life in the old dog yet, and plenty of good times ahead. The notion myself as a kind of tame dairy cow for a lot of women and kids to chase up and down doesn't appeal to me. We didn't talk much at breakfast. Hilda was in a "I don't know what we're going to do" mood, partly owing to the price of butter, and partly because the Christmas holidays was nearly over. There was still £5 owing to school for fees for last term. I ate my boiled egg and spread a piece of bread with golden crown marmalade. Hilda will persist in buying the stuff. It's 5p halfpenny a pound, and the label tells you, in the smallest print the law allows, it contains a certain proportion of neutral fruit juice. It started me off, in the rather irritating way I have sometimes, talking about the neutral fruit tree, wondering what they look like and what countries they grow in, until finally Hilda got angry. Not that she minds me chipping her, it's only that in some obscure way she thinks it's wicked to make jokes about anything you save money on. I had a look at the paper. There weren't much news. Down in Spain and over in China there was murdering one another, as usual. Horn's legs had been found in a railway waiting room, and King Zog's wedding were wavering in the balance. Finally, about 10 o'clock, rather earlier than I'd intended, I started out for town. The kids had gone off to play in the public gardens. It was a beastly raw morning. As I stepped out the front door, a nasty little gust of wind caught a soapy patch on my neck. It made me suddenly feel that my clothes didn't fit. I was sticky all over. That's the end of chapter 1. I had a quick swallow of water. Not too much to say about that chapter. Obviously, it is notable. Remarkably frank portrait of the life of a middle-aged man. Unremarkable it seems, but perhaps remarkable in his unremarkableness, I suppose. A sad sort of everyman. Pressing on though. 2. Do you know the road I live in? Ellesmere Road, West Bletchley. Even if you don't, you know 50 others exactly like it. You know how these streets fester all over the inner outer suburbs? Always the same. Long, long rows of little semi-detached houses. The numbers in Ellesmere Road run to 212, and ours is 191. As much alike as council houses, and generally uglier. The stucco front, the creosoted gate, the privet edge, green front door, the laurels, the myrtles, the hawthorns, Monabry, Monrepo, Bellevue. Or perhaps one house in 50, some antisocial type, will probably end up in the workhouse, has painted his front door blue instead of green. That sticky feeling round my neck had put me in a demoralised kind of mood. It's curious how it gets you down, to have a sticky neck. Seems to take all the bounce out of you, like when you suddenly discover in a public place that the sole of one of your shoes is coming off. I had no illusions about myself that morning. They were almost as if I could stand at a distance and watch myself coming down the road, with my fat red face and my false teeth and my vulgar clothes. A chap like me is incapable of looking like a gentleman. Even if you saw me at 200 yards distance, you'd know immediately. Not perhaps that I was in the insurance business, but I was some kind of tout or salesman. The clothes I was wearing were practically the uniform of the tribe. Grey herringbone suit, a bit the worse for wear. Blue overcoat costing 50 shillings. Bowler hat, no gloves. I got the look that's particular to people who sell things on commission. A kind of coarse, brazen look. My best moments, I got a new suit when I'm smoking a cigar, might pass for a bookie, a Republican. When things is very bad, I might be touting vacuum cleaners, but ordinary times you place me correctly. 5 to 10 quid a week, you'd say, as soon as you saw me. Economically and socially, I'm about the average level of Ellesmere Road. I had the street pretty much to myself. I made a bunk to catch the 821, and the woman was fiddling with the gas stoves. When you've time to look about you, and when you happen to be in the right mood, it's a thing that makes you laugh inside. Walk down these streets in the inner outer suburbs, and think of the lives that go on there. Because after all, what is a road like Ellesmere Road? Just a prison with the cells all in a row. I lie in a semi-detached torture chambers, the poor little £5 to £10 a week, quake and shiver, every one of them with the boss twisting his tail, the wife riding him like the nightmare, the kids sucking his blood like leeches. There's a lot of rot talked about the suffering of the working class. I'm not so sorry for the pros myself. You ever know a navvy who lay awake thinking about the sack? The pro suffers physically, but he's a free man when he isn't working. In every one of these little stucco boxes, there's some poor bastard who's never free, except when he's fast asleep and dreaming that he's got the boss down the bottom of a well, and there's burning lumps of coal at him. Of course, the basic trouble with people like us, I said to myself, is that we all imagine we've got something to lose. To begin with, 9/10 of the people in Ellesmere Road are under the impression that they own their houses. Ellesmere Road and the old quarter surrounding it, till you get to Yard Street, is part of a huge racket called the Hesperides Estate, the property of the Cheerful Credit Building Society. Building societies are probably the cleverest racket of the modern times. My own line insurance is a swindle, I admit it, but it's an open swindle with the cards on the table. But the beauty of the building society swindles is that your victims think you're doing them a kindness. You wallop them and they lick your hand. I sometimes think I'd like to have the Hesperides Estate surmounted by an enormous statue to the god of building societies. It would be a queer sort of god. Among other things, it would be bisexual. The top half would be a managing director, the bottom half would be a wife in the family way. In one hand it would carry an enormous key, the key of the workhouse, of course, and in the other, what do they call those things? Like French horns, with the presents coming out of them. A cornucopia, out of which they would be pouring portable radios, life insurance policies, false teeth, aspirins, French letters, and concrete garden rollers. As a matter of fact, in Ellesmere Road we don't own our houses, even when we finish paying for them. They're not freehold, they're leasehold. They're priced at 55, payable over a period of 16 years. They're a class of house which, if you bought them for cash down, would cost around about £380. That represents a profit of £170 for the cheerful credit, but needless to say the cheerful credit makes a lot more out of it than that. £380 includes the builder's profit, but the cheerful credit, under the name of Wilson and Bloom, builds the houses itself and scoops the builder's profit. All it is to pay is for the materials. It also scoops the profit on the materials, because under the name of Brook and Scatterby, it sells itself the bricks, tiles, doors, window frames, sand, cement, and I think glass. It wouldn't altogether surprise me to learn that under yet another alias, it sells itself the timber to make the doors and window frames. Also, and this was something which we really might have foreseen, that gave us all a knock when we discovered it, cheerful credit doesn't always keep to its end of the bargain. When Ellesmere Road were built, it gave some open fields. Nothing very wonderful, but good for the kids to play in, and known as Platt's Meadow. There were nothing in black and white, but it had always been understood that Platt's Meadow weren't to be built on. However, West Bletchley were a growing suburb, Rothwell's jam factory had opened in 28, the Anglo-American all-steel bicycle factory started in 33. The population were increasing and rents was going up. I never seen Sir Albert Crumb or any other of the big noises of the cheerful credit in the flesh. In my mind's eye I could see their mouths watering. Suddenly the builders arrived and houses began to go up on Platt's Meadow. There were an howl of agony from the Hesperides, and a Tenants' Defence Association was set up. No use. Crumb's lawyers had knocked the stuffing out of us in 5 minutes. Platt's Meadows was built over. But the really subtle swindler, the one that makes me feel old Crumb deserved his baronetcy, is the mental one. Merely because of the illusion that we own our houses and have what's called a stake in the country, we poor saps in the Hesperides and all such places are turned into Crumb's devoted slaves forever. We're all respectable householders, that is to say Tories, yes-men and bum-suckers. Daren't kill the goose that lays the gilded eggs. The fact that actually we aren't householders, that we're all in the middle of paying for our houses, and eating up with a ghastly fear that something might happen before we've made the last payment, merely increases the effect. We're all bought, and what's more, we're bought with our own money. Every one of these poor downtrodden bastards sweating his guts out to pay twice the proper price for a brick doll's house that's called a Belle Vue because there's no view and the bell don't ring. Every one of those poor suckers would die on the field of battle to save his country from Bolshevism. I turned down Walpole Road and got on the R Street. There's a train to London at 10:14. I was just passing the Sixpenny Bazaar when I remembered the mental note I'd made that morning about a packet of razor blades. When I got to the soap counter, the floor manager, whatever his proper title is, was cursing the girl in charge there. Generally there aren't many people in the Sixpenny at that hour of the morning. Sometimes if you go in just after opening time, you'll see all the girls lined up in a row, giving them morning curls, just getting the trim for the day. They say these big chain stores have chaps with special powers of sarcasm and abuse, who sent from branch to ginger the girls up. The floor manager were an ugly little devil, undersized, with very square shoulders and a sparky grey moustache. He just pounced on her about some mistake in the change evidently, but going for her with a voice like a circular saw. "Oh no, course you can count it, course you can. Too much trouble that'd be, oh no." Before I could stop myself, I caught the girl's eye. It wasn't so nice for her to have a fat, middle-aged bloke with a red face looking on while she took her cursing. I turned away as quickly as I could, pretending to be interested in some stuff at the next counter, curtain rings or something. "You're on her again. You're one of those people who turn away and then suddenly dart back at you, like a dragonfly. Course you can count it, don't matter if you. Do you if we're too bob out, don't matter at all. What's too bob to you? Can ask you to go to the trouble of counting it properly, oh no. Nothing matters here except your convenience. You don't think about others, do you?" This went on for about 5 minutes, and the voice you could hear from half across the shop. He kept turning away to make her think he'd finished, and then darting back to have another go. As I edged a bit further off, I had a glance at them. The girl were a kid, about 18, rather fat, with a sort of moony face. Done would never get the change right anyway. She turned pale pink and she was wriggling, actually wriggling with pain. It was just the same as if it'd been cutting into her with a whip. The girls at the other counters was pretending not to hear. He were an ugly, stiff-built little devil. Sort of cocksparrow type of man that sticks his chest out, puts his hand under his coattails. The type that'd be a sergeant major, and they aren't tall enough. Do you notice how often they have undersized men for these bullying jobs? He was sticking his face, moustache and all, almost into her, so as to scream at her better. And the girl, all pink and wriggling. Finally he decided he'd said enough, and strutted off like an admiral on the quarterdeck. I come up to the counter for my razor blades. He knew I'd heard every word, and so did she. And both of them knew I knew they knew. But worse of it was that for my benefit she got to pretend that nothing had happened, and put on the standoffish, keep your distance attitude that a shopkeeper girl is supposed to have. To keep up with male customers. I had about the grown-up young lady half a minute after I'd seen her curse like a skivvy. Her face was still pink, and her hands was trembling. I asked her for penny blades, and she started fumbling in the threepenny tray. And the little devil of a floor manager turned our way, and for a moment both of us thought he were coming back to begin again. The girl flinched like a dog that sees the whip. But she was looking at me out the corner of her eyes. I could see that because I'd seen her cursed. I could see that because I'd seen her curse, she hated me like the devil. Queer. I cleared out with my razor blades. Why do they stand there? I was thinking. Pure funk, of course. One back answer and you get the sack. It's the same everywhere. I thought the lad that sometimes served me at the chain store grocery would deal out. Great hefty lump at 20, with cheeks like roses and enormous forearms. Ought to be working in a blacksmith shop. And there he is in his white jacket, bent double across the counter, rubbing his hands together with his "Yes, sir, it's very true, sir. Pleasant weather for the time of year, sir. What can I have the pleasure of getting you today, sir? Practically asking you to kick his bum." Orders, of course. Customer's always right. The thing you can see in his face is mortal dread that you might report him for impertinence and get him sacked. Besides, how's he to know you aren't one of the marks the company sounds round? Fear, we swim in it. It's our element. Everyone that isn't scared stiff for losing his job is scared stiff of war, or fascism, or communism, or something. Jews threaten when they think of Hitler. It crossed my mind that little bastard with a spiky moustache would probably have a damn sight more scared for his job than the girl was. Probably got a family to support. And perhaps, who knows, at home he's meek and mild, grows cucumbers in the back garden, lets his wife sit on him and the kids pull his moustache. By the same token, you never read about a Spanish Inquisitor, one of them higher-ups in the Russian Ogpu, without being told that in private life he was such a good, calm man, best of husbands and fathers, devoted to his tame canary and so forth. The girl at the soap counter was looking after me as I went out the door. She'd have murdered me if she could. Now she hated me because of what I'd seen. Much more than she hated the floor manager. That's the end of chapter 2. Now I have a little drink of water. Well. Isn't this a distressingly honest little book? Lord Almighty. It's strange, actually. Because in some ways it's very of its time. You know, the sort of light-hearted bit of commentary there about Jews being afraid of Hitler. This book having come out shortly before World War II. But then at the same time, there's some very universal principles in there. Fear of losing the job, of having nothing to lose, they're back screwing you. Well, by the standards of today, though, they're being very generous indeed, I'm sure. And you've got to imagine, only 170% markup on an house. God. Living the life of Larry, eh? But yeah. Anyhow, let's press on, shall we? Chapter 3. There was a bombing plane flying overhead. For a minute or two, it seemed to be keeping pace with the train. Two vulgar kind of blokes in shabby overcoats, obviously commercials of the lowest type, newspaper canvassers probably, were sitting opposite me. One of them were reading the Mail, the other were reading the Express. I could see by their manners they'd spotted me for one of their kind. Up at the other end of the carriage, two lawyers clerks with black bags, was keeping up a conversation, full of legal baloney that were meant to impress the rest of us and show they didn't belong to the common herd. I was watching the backs of the houses sliding past. The line from West Bletchley runs most of the way through the slums. It's a kind of peaceful. The glimpse you get a little backyard with bits of flowers stuck in boxes, and the flat roofs where the women peg out the washing, and the bird cage on the wall. The great black bombing plane swayed a little in the air and zoomed ahead, so I couldn't see it. I was sitting with my back to the engine. One of the commercials caught his eye on it for just a second. I knew what you were thinking. For that matter, it's what everybody's thinking. There have to be an eyebrow to think such thoughts nowadays. In 2 years' time, 1 year's time, what should we be doing when we see one of those things? Making a dive for the cellar, on our bags of fright? The commercial bloke put down his Daily Mail. "Templegate winter's coming in," he said. The lawyer's clerks were spouting some learned rot about fee simple and peppercorns. The other commercial fell in his waistcoat pocket and took out a bent woodbine. He felt in the other pocket and then leaned across to me. "Got a match, Tubby?" I felt for my matches. Tubby, you noticed. That's interesting, really. For about a couple of minutes I stopped thinking about bombs. I began thinking about my figure as I'd studied it in my bath that morning. It's quite true I'm tubby. In fact, my upper half is almost exactly the shape of a tub. What's interesting is, I think, that merely because you happen to be a little bit fat, almost anyone, even a total stranger, will take it for granted to give you a nickname that's insulting comment in your personal appearance. Suppose a chap was an hunchback or had a squint or an air lip. Would you give him a nickname that reminded him of it? Every fat man's labelled as a matter of course. I'm the type that people automatically slap on the back and punch in the ribs, and nearly all of them think I like it. I never go in at the saloon bar or the Cow at Pudley. I pass that way once a week on business. That ass Waters, who travels for the seafoam soaked people, who's more or less permanency in the saloon bar of the Crown, prodding me in the ribs and singing out, "Here the sheer hulk lays, poor Tom Bolin," which is a joke the bloody fools in the bar now get tired of. What's got a finger like a bar of iron? They all think a fat man doesn't have any feeling. The commercial took another of my matches to pick his teeth with and chucked the box back. The train whizzed onto an iron bridge. Down below I got a glimpse of a baker's van, a long string of lorries loaded with cement. The queer thing I was thinking is that, in a way, they're right about fat men. It's a fact that a fat man, particularly a man who's been fat from birth, from childhood that's to say, isn't quite like other men. He goes through his life on a different plane, a sort of light comedy plane, though in the case of blokes at sideshows at fairs, or if had anyone over 20 stone, it isn't so much a light comedy as a low farce. I've been both fat and thin in my life, and I know the difference fatness makes to your outlook. It kind of prevents you from taking things too hard. I doubt whether a man who's never been anything but fat, a man who's been called fatty ever since he could walk, even knows of the existence of any really deep emotions. How could he? He's got no experience of such things. He can't ever be present at a tragic scene, because a scene where there's a fat man present isn't tragic. It's comic. Just imagine a fat Hamlet, for instance, or Oliver Hardy acting Romeo. Funnily enough, I've been thinking something of the kind only a few days earlier, when I was reading the novel I got out of Boots. Wasted Passion, it was called. The chap in the story finds out his girl has gone off with another chap. He's one of them chaps you read about in novels that have a pale, sensitive face, dark hair, and a private income. I remember more or less how the passage went. David paced up and down the room, his hands pressed to his forehead. The news seemed to have stunned him. For a long time he could not believe it. Sheila untrue to him. It could not be. Suddenly realisation rushed over him when he saw the fact in all its stark horror. It was too much. He flung himself down in a paroxysm of weeping. Anyway, it went something like that. And even at the time it started me thinking. There you have it, you see. That's how some people are expected to behave. But how about a chap like me? Suppose Hilda was off for a weekend with somebody else. Not that I'd care a damn. In fact, I'd be rather pleased with her to find she'd still got that much kick left in her. But suppose I did care. Would I fling myself down in a paroxysm of weeping? Would anyone expect me to? You couldn't with a figure like mine. It would be downright obscene. The train was running along an embankment. A little below us you could see the roofs of the houses stretching on and on. The little red roofs where the bombs are going to drop, a bit lined up at this moment because of a ray of sunshine catching on them. Funny how we keep on thinking about bombs. Of course, there's no question that's coming soon. You can tell how close it is by the cheer up stuff they're talking about in the newspaper. I was reading a piece in the News Chronicle the other day where it said that the bombing plane can't do any damage nowadays. The anti-aircraft guns got so good the bombers had to stay at 20,000 feet. The chap thinks, you noticed, that if an aeroplane's high enough the bombardments don't reach the ground. Or more likely what he really meant was they'll miss Woolwich, Arsenal and only at places like Ellesmere Road. But taking it by and large, I thought it's not so bad to be fat. One thing about a fat man is that he's always a popular. There's really no kind of company, from bookies to bishops, where a fat man doesn't fit in and feel at home. As for women, fat men have more luck with them than people seem to think. It's all bunk to imagine, as some people do. A woman looks on a fat man as just a joke. The truth is that a woman doesn't look on any man as a joke if he can get her that he's in love with her. Mind you, I haven't always been fat. I've been fat for 8 or 9 years. I suppose I've developed most of the characteristics. There's also a fact that internally, mentally, I'm not altogether fat. Now don't mistake me. I'm not trying to put myself over as a kind of tender flower, the aching heart behind the smiling face and so forth. You couldn't get on the insurance business if you was anything like that. I'm vulgar. I'm insensitive. I fit in with my environment. So long as anywhere in the world things are being sold on commission and livings are picked up by sheer brass and lack of finer feelings, chaps like me will be doing it. In almost all circumstances I've managed to make a living. Always a living and never a fortune. And even in war, revolution, plague and famine, I back myself to stay alive longer than most people. I'm that type. But also I've got something else inside me, chiefly an hangover from the past. I'll tell you about that later. I'm fat, but I'm thin inside. Has it ever struck you there's a thin man inside every fat bloke, just as I said there's a statue inside every block of stone? The chap who borrowed my matches was having a good pick at his teeth over the express. "Legs case don't seem to get much further," he said. "I'll never get him," said the other. "How could you identify a pair of legs? They're all the bleeding same, aren't they?" "Only trace them through the piece of paper you wrapped them up in," said the first. Down below you could see the roofs and the houses stretching on and on, twisting this way and that with the streets, but stretching on and on like an enormous plain that you could have ridden over. Whichever way you cross London, it's 20 miles of houses almost without a break. Christ, how can the bombers miss us when they come? It's just one great big bullseye. No warming, probably. Who's going to be such a bloody fool as to declare war nowadays? If I was it, I'd send my bombers across the middle of a disarmament conference. Some quiet morning when the clerks are streaming across London Bridge, the canaries singing and the old woman's pregging the bloomers on the line. Zoom, whiz, bonk. Houses going up in the air, bloomers soaked with blood. Canaries singing on above the corpse. Seems a pity somehow, I thought. I looked at the great sea of roofs stretching on and on. Miles and miles of streets, fried fish shops, tin chapels, picture houses, little printing shops up back alleys, factories, blocks of flats, whelk stores, dairies, power stations, on and on and on. Enormous. And the peacefulness of it, like a great wilderness with no wild beasts, no guns firing, nobody chucking pineapples, nobody beating anybody else up with rubber truncheon. If you come to think of it, the whole of England at this moment, there probably isn't a single bedroom window at which anyone is firing a machine gun. But how about 5 years from now? Or 2 years? Or 1 year? That's the end of chapter 3. And given that we are about to head into the break, we should take a bit of a pause. We shall call that there for the moment and take a bit of a pause to consider some more of a chapter in the book so far, shall we? So, first things first, let's have a quick swallow of water. Ooh. Ah, so, well, no, then first things first, let's have a stretch, shall we, Blake? Look at you, the way. Turn up twice in this book now. First and being predicted, and then it's something this fella could survive longer than most people. Impressive, right? So, neck first, that is the tradition. Ooh. I think you heard that one, that was a good one. Right. Then we stand up and do the back. Oh. Whoa. Oh, Lord. Right, thank you for that. Needed that. Right then. Then we have a drink of water. So then, what's there to say about this story? Well, immediately it stands out to me as being very much two things. Very lower middle class, and very English. Obviously the English part is pretty self-explanatory. We're in the city of London, in the suburb of Bletchley, and all these places and things, you know. Typically English. Rows of semi-detached houses, Welk stores, a sixpence store, you know. Very much in the sort of bane of it. A man who wears a herringbone suit. Very much rooted in its place. As for being lower middle class, I mean, you hear him talk about it. People who own their house, sort of, what I think is an early version of a mortgage, is what he's describing, but, you know. People who own their house, but sort of, and those houses are small and unpleasant. Families to support. Standing above the tradies, of course, 5 to 10 bob a day. Firmly middle class, and of course above other middle class people, not the lower sort of salesmen, no. Insurance, respectable. I mean, it's a grift, but it's an open grift. £17 stored away, which is almost 2 weeks, well, it is 2 weeks income for him, almost 3. Money set aside, you know, middle class. And the two other things it uses is very strongly of its time, with all the talk of the looming war, the threat of it coming, and very much not of its time, or at least very much universal, in the sense that there is always fear and panic. Everyone is always afraid of losing things, everyone is always screwed by the banks, and trapped in situations they don't expect. It's a really good book, actually. It's really sort of startled me. And obviously George Orwell, famously a good author, we've done Animal Farm, that was a good one. And obviously he's famous for quite a few of his books, 1984 and that, but I've never heard it coming up for air really before we got it for the library. And I can sort of see why. It's got that the sort of an Englishness in 1984, if you've ever read it, that he's turned up to a quite extreme degree here. Yeah. Old book, isn't it? Old book. Let's have a swallow of water, shall we? Press on. Cheers. But yeah. That's what I got note from so far anyway, so let's press on directly, shall we? Chapter 4. I dropped my papers at the office. Warner is one of them cheap American dentists, and he has his consulting room, or parlour as he likes to call it, halfway up a big block of offices, between a photographer and a rubber goods wholesaler. I was early for my appointment, but with time for a bit of grub. Don't know what put it in my head to go for a milk bar. I'll go into a milk bar. They're places I generally avoid. We £5 to £10 a week aren't well served in the way of eating places in London. If you're an idea of the amount to spend on a meal in one is 1 and 3 pence, it's either Leon's, the Express Dairy, or the ABC. Or it's the kind of funeral snack they serve you in the saloon bar. A pint of bitter and a slab of cold pie. So cold it's colder than the beer. Outside the milk bar, the boys were selling the first editions of the evening papers. Behind the bright red counter, a girl in a tall white cap were fiddling with an icebox. And somewhere at the back, a radio were playing. Plonk, tiddle, tiddle, plonk. Had a tinny sound. Why the hell am I coming here? I thought to myself as I went in. There's a kind of atmosphere about these places that gets me down. Everything's slick and shiny and streamlined. Mirrors, enamel, chromium plate, whichever direction you're looking. Everything spent on the decorations and nothing on the food. No real food at all. Just a list of stuffs with American names, a sort of a phantom stuff that you can't taste and hardly believe the existence of. Everything comes out of a carton or a tin, or it's handed out of a refrigerator, or squirted out top, out of a tap, or squeezed out of a tube. No comfort, no privacy. Tall stools to sit on, kind of narrow ledge to eat off. Mirrors all round you, sort of propaganda floating around, mixed up with the noise of the radio. The fact the food doesn't matter. Comfort doesn't matter. Nothing matters except slickness and shininess and streamlinings. Everything's streamlined nowadays, even the bullet it was keeping for you. I ordered a large coffee and a couple of frankfurters. The girl in the white cap jerked them at me with about as much interest as she'd throw an ant's egg to a goldfish. Outside the door, a newsboy yelled, "Starner's Standard!" I saw the poster flapping against his knees. Legs, fresh discoveries. Just legs, you noticed. You'd gone down to that. 2 days earlier, they found the woman's legs in the railway waiting room, done up in brown paper parcel. And what with successive editions of the paper, the whole nation was supposed to be so passionately interested in those blasted legs, they didn't need any other further introduction. It was the only legs that were in the news at the minute. It's queer, I thought, as they had a bit of wrong, how dull the murders are getting nowadays. All this cutting people up and leaving out bits of them about the countryside. Not a patch in the old domestic poisoning dramas. Crippen, Seddon, Miss Maybrick. The truth being, I suppose, that you can't do a good murder unless you believe you're going to roast an elf for it. At the moment, I bit into one of my frankfurters, and Christ, I can't honestly say I expected the thing to have a pleasant taste. I'd expected it to taste of nothing, like the roll. But this was quite an experience. Let me try and describe it for you. The frankfurter had a rubber skin, of course, and my temporary teeth weren't much of a fit. I had to do a kind of sawing movement in order to get my teeth through the skin. And suddenly, pop! It burst in my mouth like a rotten pear. Some horrible soft stuff were oozing all over my tongue. And the taste! For a moment I just couldn't believe it. I rolled my tongue around it again and had another try. It was fish. A sausage, a thing calling itself a frankfurter filled with fish. I got up and walked straight out without touching my coffee. God knows what it might have tasted of. Outside, the newsboy stubbed the Standard into my face and yelled, "Legs! Horrible revelations! All the winners! Legs! Legs!" I was still rolling the stuff around my tongue, wondering where I could spit it out. I remembered a bit I'd read in the paper somewhere about these food factories in Germany where everything's made out of something else. Ersatz, they call it. I remembered reading that they were making sausage out of fish. Fish, no doubt, had something different. Gave me the feeling that I'd bitten into the modern world and discovered what they were really made of. That's the way we're going nowadays. Everything's slick and streamlined. Everything made out of something else. Celluloid, rubber, chromium steel everywhere. Arc lamps blazing all night. Glass roofs over your head. Radios all playing the same tune. No vegetation left. Everything cemented over. Mock turtles grazing under the neutral fruit trees. When you come down to brass tacks and you get your teeth into something solid, a sausage for instance, that's what you get. Rotten fish in a rubber skin. Bombs of filth bursting inside your mouth. When I got the new teeth in, I felt a lot better. They sat nice and smooth over the gums. And though very likely it sounds absurd to say that false teeth can make you feel younger, it's the fact that they did so. I tried to smile at myself in a shop window. They weren't half bad. Warner, though cheap, is a bit of an artist. He doesn't aim at making you look like a toothpaste advert. He's got huge cabinets full of false teeth. He showed them me once, all graded according to size and colour, and he picks them out like a jeweller, choosing stones for necklaces. 9 people out of 10 would have taken my teeth for natural. I caught a full-length glimpse of myself in another window on passing. It struck me that really, I wasn't such a bad figure of a man. A bit on the fat side, admittedly, but nothing offensive. Only what a tailor would call a full figure. Some woman like a man with a red face. There's life in the old dog yet, I thought. I remember my 17 quid. I definitely made up my mind that I'd spend it on a woman. It was time to have a pipe before the pub shut, just to baptise the teeth. Feeling rich because of my 17 quid, I stopped at a tobacconist's and bought myself a sixpenny cigar of the kind I'm rather partial to. They're 8 inches long, guaranteed pure Havana leaf all through. I suppose cabbage is grown in Havana, same as anywhere else. When I come out of the pub, I felt quite different. I'd had a couple of pints, it warmed me up inside, and the cigar smoke oozing round my new teeth gave me a fresh, clean, peaceful sort of feeling. All of a sudden I felt kind of thoughtful and philosophic. It was partly because I didn't have any work to do. My mind went back to the thoughts of war I'd been having early in the morning when the bomber flew over the train. I felt in kind of a prophetic mood, a mood in which you foresee the end of the world and get a certain kick out of it. We were walking westward up the Strand. Though it was coldish, I went slowly to get the pleasure of my cigar. The usual crowd that you can hardly fight your way through was streaming up the pavement, all of them with that insane fixed expression on their face. People have in London streets. And there were the usual jam of traffic with the great red buses, nosing their way between the cars, the engines roaring and horns tooting. Enough noise to waken the dead, not to waken this lot, I thought. I felt as if I were the only person awake in a city of sleepwalkers. That's an illusion, of course. When you walk through a crowd of strangers, it's next door to impossible not to imagine that they're all waxworks. But probably they're thinking just about the same as you. This kind of prophetic feeling that just keeps coming over me nowadays. The feeling that war's just around the corner, that war's the end of all things, isn't peculiar to me. We all got it more or less. I suppose even among the people pussing at that moment, there must have been chaps who were seeing mental pictures of the shell bursts in the mud. Ever thought you think there's always a million people thinking it at the same moment? That how I felt. We're all on the burning deck, and nobody knows it except me. I looked at all the dumbbell faces streaming past. Like turkeys in November, I thought. Not a notion of what's coming at them. It was as if I'd got x-rays in my eyes. I could see the skeletons walking. I looked forward a few years. I saw this street as it will be in 5 years' time, say, or 3 years' time. 1941, they say, it's booked for. After the fighting started. No, not all smashed to pieces. Only a little altered, kind of chipped and dirty looking. The shop window almost empty, so dusty you can't see into them. Down a side street there's an enormous bomb crater, and a block of buildings burnt out so it looks like an hollow tooth. Thermite. It's all curiously quiet. Everyone's very thin. A platoon of soldiers come marching up the street. They're all as thin as rakes, and their boots is dragging. The sergeant's got a corkscrew moustache and holds himself like a ramrod, but he's thin too. He's got a cough that almost tears him open. Between his coughs, he's trying to bawl at them in the old parade ground style. Now then, Jones, lift your head up. What you keep staring at the ground for? All them fag ends were picked up years ago. Suddenly a fit of coughing catches him. He tries to stop it. Can't. Doubles up like a ruler. Almost coughs his guts out. His face turns pink and purple. His moustache goes limp. And the water runs out of his eyes. I can hear the air raid sirens blowing and the loudspeakers bellowing that our glorious troops have taken 100,000 prisoners. I see a top floor black in Birmingham and a child of 5 howling and howling for a bit of bread. And suddenly the mother can't stand it any longer and she yells at it, "Shut your trap, you little bastard!" And she ups the child's frock and smacks its bottom arm because there ain't any bread. Ain't gonna be any bread. I see it all. I see the posters and the few cues, the castor oil on the rubber truncheons, the machine guns squirting out of the bedroom window. Is it going to happen? No knowing. Some days it's impossible to believe it. Some days I say to myself that it's just a scare got up by the newspapers. Some days I know in my bones there's no escaping it. When I got down near Charing Cross, the boys was young on the later edition of the evening papers. There was some more drivel about the murder, Legg's famous surgeon's statement. Another poster caught my eye. King Zog's wedding postponed. King Zog, what a name. It's next door to impossible to believe a chap with a name like that isn't a jet black Negro. But just that moment, a queer thing happened. King Zog's name, I suppose as I'd already seen the name several times that day, were mixed up with some sound in the traffic or the smell of horse dung or something. It started memories in me. The past is a curious thing. It's with you all the time, I suppose. An hour never passes without you thinking a thing that happened 10 or 20 years ago. Yet most of the time it's got no reality. It's just a set of facts that you've learned, like a lot of stuff in an history book. Then some chance sight, the sound, the smell, especially the smell, sets you going. The past don't merely come back to you, you're actually in the past. Well, like that at this moment. Well, back in the parish church at Lower Blimfield, it was 38 years ago. To outward appearances, I suppose, I was still walking down the Strand, fat and 45, with false teeth and a bowler hat. But inside me I was Georgie Boland, aged 7, youngest son of Samuel Boland, corn and seed merchant of 57 R Street, Lower Blimfield. It was Sunday morning, and I could smell the church. How I could smell it? You know the smell churches have, a peculiar, dank, dusty, decaying, sweetish sort of smell. There's a touch of candle grease in it, and perhaps a whiff of incense. The suspicion of mice, on Sunday mornings, is a bit overlaid by yellow soap and serge dresses. But predominantly it's a sweet, dusty, musty smell. It's like the smell of death and life mixed up together. It's powdered corpses, really. In those days they were about 4 feet high. We'll stand on the Essex just to see over the pew in front. And I could feel Mother's black serge dress under my hands. I could also feel my stockings pulled up over my knees. I used to wear them like that then. And the sore edges of the Eton collar they used to buckle me into on Sunday mornings. I could hear the organ wheezing, the 2 enormous voices bellowing out the psalm. In our church there were 2 men who led the singing. In fact, they did so much of the singing that nobody else got much of a chance. One was Shooter, the fishmonger. The other were all Wetherall, the joiner and undertaker. They used to sit opposite one another on either side of the nave, and pews nearest the pulpit. Shooter were a short, fat man with a very pink, smooth face, big nose, drooping moustache, and a chin that kind of fell away beneath his mouth. Wetherall were quite different. He was a great, gaunt, powerful old devil, about 60, with a face like a death's head and stiff grey hair, half an inch long all over his head. I'd never seen a living man who looked so exactly like the skeleton. You could see every line of the skull on his face. His skin was like paint parchment. His great lantern jaw full of yellow teeth, worked up and down, just like the jaw of a skeleton in an anatomical museum. In all his leanness, he looked as strong as iron, as though he'd lived to be 100 and make coffins for everyone in that church before he'd finished. The voices were quite different too. She had a kind of desperate, agonised bellow, as though someone had a knife at his throat. He was just letting out his last yell for help. But Wetherall had a tremendous, chorusing, rumbling noise that happened deep down inside him, like an enormous barrel being rolled to and fro on the ground. However much noise he let out, you always knew he'd got plenty more in reserve. The kids nicknamed him Rumble Tommy. He used to get up a kind of antiphonal effect, especially in the Psalms. It was always Wetherall had the last word, I suppose really they was friends in private life, but in my kid's way, they used to imagine they was deadly enemies and try and shout one another down. Shooter would roar out, "The Lord is my shepherd," and Wetherall would come in with, "Therefore can I lack nothing," drowning them completely. He always knew which of the 2 were master. He used especially to look forward to that psalm that has the bit about Sihon, king of the Amorites, and Og, the king of the Bashan. That was King Zog's name. That was King Zog's name it reminded me of. Shooter would start off with Sihon, king of the Amorites, and then perhaps for half a second you could hear the rest of the congregation singing the and then Wetherall's enormous bass would come in like a tidal wave and swallow everybody up with Og, king of the Bashan. I wish I could make you hear the tremendous, rumbling, subterranean barrel noise that you could get into that word. Og. He even used to clip the The end off of the and. So that when I was a very small kid, I used to think they were Dog, the king of Bashan. But later when I got the names right, I formed a picture in my mind's eye of Shion and Og. I saw them as a couple of those great Egyptian statues that I'd seen pictures of in the Penny Encyclopedia. Enormous stone statues 30 feet high, sitting on their thrones opposite one another, with their hands on their knees, a faint mysterious smile on their faces. Now it come back to me. A peculiar feeling. Not only a feeling, you couldn't describe it as an activity. What we used to call church. The sweet corpsey smell, the rustle of Sunday dresses, the wheeze of the organ and the roaring voices. A spot of light from the hole in the window creeping slowly up the nave. In some way the grown-ups could put it across that this extraordinary performance were necessary. You took it for granted, just as you took the Bible, which you got a big dose of in those days. There were texts on every wall, and you know the old chapters of the OT by heart. Even now my head's still stuffed full of bits of the Bible. And the children of Israel did evil again in the sight of the Lord, and Asher abode in his breaches, followed them from Dan until thou come into Beersheba, smote him under the fifth ribs that he died. You never understood it, you didn't try to or want to. It was just a kind of medicine, a queer tasting stuff that you had to swallow, and knew to be in some way necessary. An extraordinary rigmarole about people with names like Shimei and Nebuchadnezzar and Ahitophel, Hashdaba and Hashtabada. People with long stiff garments and Assyrian beards, riding up and down on camels among temples and cedar trees, doing extraordinary things, sacrificing burnt offerings, walking about in fiery furnaces, getting nailed on crosses, getting swallowed by whales, and all mixed up with the sweet graveyard smell and the serge dresses and the wheeze of the organ. At the world I went back to when I saw the poster about King Zog. For a moment I didn't merely remember it, I were in it. Of course such impressions don't last more than a few seconds. A moment later it was as though I'd opened my eyes again. I was 45, and there were a traffic jam in the Strand, but it left a kind of after effect behind. Sometimes when you come out of a train of thought, you feel as if you were coming up from a deep water. This time it was the other way about. It was as though I were back in the... It was as though it were back in 1900 that I'd been breathing real air. Even now, with my eyes open, so to speak, all those bloody fools hustling to and fro, all the posters and the petrol stink, the roar of the engine seemed to me less real than that Sunday morning in Lower Binfield 38 years ago. I chucked away my cigar and I walked on slowly. I can smell the corpse smell. The manner of speaking, I can smell it now. I'm back in Lower Binfield. The year's 1900. Beside the horse trough in the marketplace, the carrier's horse is having its nose back. The sweet shop in the corner, Mother Wheeler is weighing out a half-porth of that brandy balls. Lady Ramplin's carriage is driving by with a tiger sitting behind in his pipe-clay breeches, with his arms folded. Uncle Ezekiel is cursing Joe Chamberlain, recruiting sergeant in his scarlet jacket, tight blue overalls and pillbox hat. He's strapping up and down and twisted his moustache. The drunks are puking in the yard behind George's. Vicky's at Windsor, God in heaven. Christ on the cross. Jonah's in the whale. Shadrach, Menach, and Abednego are in the fiery furnace. Shion, king of the Amorites, and Og, the king of Bashan, are sitting on their thrones, looking at one another, not doing anything exactly, just existing, keeping their appointed places like a couple of fire dogs, or the lion and the unicorn. Is it gone forever? I'm not certain. But I tell you, it was a good world to live in. I belong to it. So do you. That's the end of chapter 4 of part 1. I will have a little swallow of water. Now we have sense memory coming up. Idea of a smell or a physical sensation generally of some kind. But smell is pretty generally agreed to be the biggest one. Bring you back to a different place and time so vividly. as though you're already there. And the need to escape from the world that is, Quite an understandable need, though, obviously. Not necessarily an helpful one. Anyhow, we press onward? I'm trying to think if I've got something else to say about it, really. I don't think so, anyway. Let's press on a little longer, I was tempted to call it there at the end of the part, but we've only been going for an hour and 20 minutes. We can go another chapter or two. Aim for 2 hours tonight, yeah? Seems fitting somehow. So, part 2. Chapter 1. The world I momentarily remembered when I saw King Zog's name on the poster was so different from the world I live in now that you might have a bit of difficulty in believing I ever belonged to it. I suppose by this time you got a kind of picture of me in your mind. A fat, middle-aged bloke with false teeth and a red face. And subconsciously you've been imagining that I was just the same even when I were in my cradle. But 45 years is a long time. Though some people don't change and develop, others do. I changed a great deal. I've had my ups and my downs, mostly ups. It may seem queer, but my father would probably be rather proud of me if he could see me now. He'd think it a wonderful thing that a son of his should own a motor car and live in a house with a bathroom. Even now I'm a little above my origin, and other times I've touched levels that we should never have dreamed of in those old days before the war. Before the war. How long should we go on saying that, I wonder? How long before the answer will be, which war? In my case, the Neverland that people were thinking of when they say before the war might almost be before the Boer War. I'm born in '93. And I actually remember the outbreak of the Boer War because of the first-class row that Father and Uncle Ezekiel had about him. I have several other memories that would date from about a year earlier than that. The very first thing I remember is the smell of samphaw chaff. We went up the stone passage that led from the kitchen to the shop, and the smell of samphaw got stronger all the way. Mother had fixed a wooden gate in the doorway to prevent Joe and my older brother, from getting into the shop. I can still remember standing there, clutching the bars, and the smell of samphaw mixed up with the damp plastery smell that belonged to the passage. It wasn't until years later that I somehow managed to crash the gate and get into the shop when nobody were there. A mouse that had been having a go at one of the meal bins suddenly plopped out and ran between my feet. They were quite white with meal. This must have happened when I was about 6. When you're very young, you seem to suddenly become conscious of things that have been under your nose for a long time past. The things round about you swim into your mind one at a time, or others they do when you're waking from sleep. For instance, it was only when I was nearly 4 that I suddenly realised that we owned a dog. Naylor his name was, an old white English terrier, the breed that goes out nowadays. That's gone out nowadays. I met him under the kitchen table, and in some way seemed to grasp. I only learnt in that moment that he belonged to us, and his name was Naylor. In the same way, a bit earlier, I discovered that beyond the gate at the end of the passage, there was a place where the smell of samphaw had come from. The shop itself, with the huge scales and the wooden measure and the tin shovel, and the white lettering on the window and the bullfinch in its cage, which you couldn't see very well even from the pavement, because the window were always dusty. All these things dropped into place in my mind one by one, like bits of a jigsaw puzzle. Time goes on, you get stronger on your legs, and by degrees you begin to get a grasp of geography. I suppose though Binfield was just like any other market town of about 2,000 inhabitants. We were in Oxfordshire. I keep saying were, you noticed, though after all the place still exists, about 5 miles from the Thames. It lay in a bit of a valley, with a low ripple of hills between itself and the Thames, and higher hills beyond. On top of the hills there was woods, a sort of dim blue mass among which you could see a great white house with a colonnade. This was Binfield House, the Hall everyone called it. The top of the hill were known as Upper Binfield. There were no village there. They hadn't been for 100 years or more. I must have been nearly 7 before I noticed the existence of Binfield House. When you're very small, you don't look into the distance. By that time, I knew every inch of the town, which was shaped roughly like a cross, with the marketplace in the middle. Our shop were in the R Street, a little before you got to the marketplace. In the corner, there were Mrs. Wheeler's sweet shop, when you spent a halfpenny when you had one. Mother Wheeler were a dirty old witch. People suspected her of sucking the bull's eyes and putting them back in a bottle. Those were never proved. Further down, there were a barber shop with the advert for Abdullah cigarettes. One was the Egyptian soldiers on it. And curiously enough, they're using the same adverts to this day. And the rich boozy smell of bay rum and the takia. Behind the houses, you could see the chimneys of the brewery. In the middle of the marketplace, there were stone houses. There were a stone horse trough. On top of the water, there were always a farm filled with dust and chaff. Before the war, especially before the Boer War, it was summer all year round. I'm quite aware that's a delusion. I'm merely trying to tell you how things come back to me. I shut my eyes and think of Lord Binfield any time before I would say, hey. It's always in summer weather that I remember it. Either it's the marketplace at dinner time, with a sort of sleepy, dusty hush over everything. The carrier's horse with his nose dug well into his nose bag, munching away. It's an hot afternoon, and the great green meadow, juicy meadows round the town. It's about dusk in the lanes behind the allotments. There's a smell of pipe tobacco and night stalks floating along through the edge. In a sense, I do remember distant seasons, because in all my memories they're bound up with things to eat, which vary at different times of year. Especially the things you used to find in the edges. In July there was strawberry, there was dewberries, they're very rare. The blackberries were getting red enough to eat. In September there were sloes and hazelnuts. The best hazelnuts was always out of reach. Later on there was beech nuts and crab apples, and there were kind of minor foods that you used to eat when there were nothing better going. Boars, but they're not much good. And hips, which have a nice sharp taste, as you clean the airs out of them. Angelica's good in early summer, especially when you're thirsty. And so are the stems of various grasses. Then there's sorrel, which is good with bread and butter, pig's nuts, and a kind of wood shamrock, which has a sour taste. Even plantain seeds are better than nothing when you're a long way from home and very hungry. Joe was 2 years older than myself. When we was very small, Mother used to pay Katie Simmons 18p a week to take us out for walks in the afternoon. Katie's father worked at the brewery and had 14 children, so the family was always on the lookout for odd jobs. She was only 12 when Joe was 7 and I was 5, and her mental level wasn't very different from ours. She used to drag me by the arm and call me baby. She had just enough authority over us to prevent us from being run over by dog carts or chased by bulls. So far as conversation went, we was almost on equal terms. We used to go for long, trailing kinds of walks, always of course picking and eating things all the way. Down the lane past the allotments, across Roper's meadows, and down into the mill farm, where there were a pool with newts and tiny carp in it. Joe and I used to go fishing there when we were a bit older. And back by the upper Binfield roads was the past the sweet shop that stood at the edge of the town. The shop was in such a bad position that anyone who took it went bankrupt. And to my own knowledge, it were 3 times a sweet shop, once a grocer's and once a bicycle repair shop. It had a peculiar fascination for children. Even when we had no money, we'd go that way, and glue our noses against the window. Katie went in the least above sharing a farthing's worth of sweets and quarrelling over her share. You could buy things worth having for a farthing in those days. Most sweets were 4 ounces a penny. There were even some stuff called Paradise Mixture, mostly broken sweets from other bottles, which was 6. And there were farthings Everlasting, which were a yard long and could be finished inside half an hour. Sugar Mars and Sugar Pigs was 8 a penny, and so were licorice pistols. Popcorn were a halfpenny for a large bag, and a prize packet which contained several different kinds of sweets, a gold ring, and sometimes a whistle were a penny. You don't see prize packets nowadays. And a whole lot of the kinds of sweets we had in those days have gone out. They were a kind of flat white sweet with mottos printed on them. Also a kind of pink stuff and an oval matchwood box with a tiny tin spoon to eat it with, which cost a halfpenny. Both of those had disappeared. So have caraway comfits, so have chocolate pipes and sugar matches. Even hundreds of thousands you hardly ever see. Hundreds of thousands are a great standby when you're only a farthing. What about penny monsters? Do one ever see a penny monster nowadays? They're a single bottle holding more than a quart of fizzy lemonade, all for a penny. That's another thing the war killed stone dead. Always seems to be summer when I look back. I can feel the grass around me tall as myself. The heat coming out of the earth, the dust in the lane and the warm green lights coming through the hazel boughs. I can see the three of us trailing along, eating stuff out of the edge, with Katie dragging at my arm saying, "Come on, baby." And sometimes she'll ned to Joe, "Joe, you come back here this minute, you'll catch it." Joe were an hefty boy with a big, lumpy sort of head, tremendous calves. Kind of boy who's always doing something dangerous. At 7 he'd already got in the short trousers, the thick black stockings drawn up over the knee, the great clumping boots that boys had to wear in those days. I was still in frocks, kind of holland overall that mother used to make for me. Kate used to wear a dreadful ragged parody of a grown-up dress, descended from sister to sister in her family. She had a ridiculous great hat with her pigtails hanging down behind it, a long draggled skirt which trailed on the ground, and button boots with the heels trodden down. She was a tiny thing, and was taller than Joe. Not bad at minding children. In a family like that, a child is minding other children about as soon as it's weaned. At times she tried to be grown up and ladylike, and she had a way of cutting you short with a proverb which, in her mind, was something unanswerable. If she said "don't care," she'd answer immediately, "Don't care was made to care, don't care was hung, don't care was put in the pot and boiled till he was done." If you called her names it would be, "Hard words break no bones," or when you've been boasting, "Pride comes before a fall." This came very true one day when I was strutting along pretending to be a soldier in front of my cowpack. Her family lived in a filthy little rat hole of a place, in a slummy street behind the brewery. The place swarmed with children like a kind of vermin. The whole family had managed to dodge going to school, which were fairly easy to do in those days, and started running errands and doing other odd jobs as soon as they could walk. One of her older brothers got a month for stealing turnips. She stopped taking us out for walks a year later, and Joe Ray, getting too tough for a girl to handle. He discovered that in Katie's home they slept 5 in a bed, and used to tease the life out of her about it. Poor Katie. She had her first baby when she was 15. Now I knew who was the father. Probably Katie wasn't too certain herself. Most people believed it was one of her brothers. Workhouse people took the baby, and Katie went in service in Malton. Sometime afterwards she married a tinker, which even by the standards of her family would have come down. Last time I saw her in 1913. While biking through Walton, I passed some dreadful wooden shacks behind outside the railway line, with fences round them made out of barrel staves, where the gypsies used to camp at certain times of year, when the police would let them. A wrinkled-up hag of a woman, with her hair coming down and a smoky face, looking at least 50 years old, come out of one of the huts, began shaking out a red mat. It was Katie, who must have been 27. That's the end of chapter 1 of part 2. Whew. Back-to-back depressing stories, eh? We've got a little theme going at the minute, don't we? It's bad enough I always don't want to press on for another one, but I've started this now, so I've committed to finishing it, in my head at least. And the less I do today, the more I'll have to do later on, so let's at least give time for that chapter to give us a little consideration, shall we? Again, a very prototypically English story, a very English childhood. Sweet shops and penny sweets. And eating things in country lanes. All the fruits of the hedgerow mentioned by name. Not quite a lower middle class upbringing. Not a million miles off, but I think, actually maybe it is, tradesman. I'm not exactly sure how they distinguished class at the time. I know it was more stratified at the time and more clear cut. Certainly a working class nanny though. Well, Lord. Grim and grimmer, yeah. Grim and grimmer. What else is there to say about it? Well, I don't think there's too much really. I mean, it's just establishing things, but it's strange really. It feels like there should be more to say about it. It feels like a lot was there, but well, let's press on, shall we? Chapter 2. Thursday was market day. Chaps with round red faces like pumpkins and dirty smocks and huge boots covered with dry cow dung, carrying long hazel switches, used to drive their brutes into the marketplace early in the morning. For hours there'd be a terrific hullabaloo, dogs barking, pigs squealing, chaps in tradesmen's vans who wanted to get through the crush, cracking their whips and cursing everyone who had anything to do with the cattle, shouting and throwing sticks. Big noise were always when they brought out a bull to market. Even at that age, it struck me that most of the bulls was harmless, law-abiding brutes. They only wanted to get their stalls in peace. But a bull wouldn't have been regarded as a bull if the town hadn't had to turn up and chase it. Sometimes some terrified brute, generally an half-grown heifer, used to break loose and charge down a side street. And anyone who happened to be in the way would stand in the middle of the straight road, swinging his arms backwards like the sails of a windmill, shouting, "Whoa, whoa!" This was supposed to have a sort of hypnotic effect on an animal, and certainly did frighten them. Halfway through the morning, some of the farmers would come into the shop and run samples of seed through their hands, their fingers. Actually, Father did very little business with the farmers, as he had no delivery van and couldn't afford to give long credits. Mostly he did a rather petty class of business, poultry food, and food fodder for the tradesmen's horses, and so forth. Old Brewer at the mill farm, or a stingy old bastard with a grey chin beard, used to stand there for half an hour, fingering samples of chicken corn and letting things drop into his pockets in an absent-minded manner, after which, of course, he finally used to make off without buying anything. In the evening, the pubs was full of drunken men. In those days, beer cost 2p a pint, and unlike the beer nowadays, it had some guts in it. All through the Boer War, the recruiting sergeant used to be in the 4-ale bar of the George every Thursday and Saturday night, dressed up in the nines and very free with his money. Sometimes next morning you'd see him leading off some great sheepish, red-faced lump of a farm lad who'd taken the shilling when he was too drunk to see, and found in the morning that it would cost him £20 to get out of it. People used to stand in their doorway and shake their heads when they saw him go past, almost as if it had been a funeral. Well, now, listed for a soldier, just think of it. Fine young fellow like that. You shot them. Listening for a soldier in their eyes was just the exact equivalent of a girl's going on the streets. Their attitudes to the war and the army were very curious. They had the good old English notions that redcoats are the scum of the earth, and anyone who joins the army will die of drink and go straight to hell. At the same time, there was good patriots, like Union Jacks in their windows, and held it as an article of faith that the English had never been beaten in a battle, and never could be. At that time, everyone, even the nonconformists, used to sing sentimental songs about the thin red line and the soldier boy who died on the battlefield far away. These soldier boys always used to die when the shot and shell were flying, I remember. It puzzled me as a kid. Sure, I could understand. But it produced a queer picture in my mind to think of a cockle shell flying through the air. When Mefekim were relieved, the people nearly yelled the roof off. And there were at any rate times when they believed the tales about the Boers chucking babies in the air and skewering them on their bayonets. Our brewer got so fed up with the kids yelling Kruger after him that towards the end of the war he shaved his beard off. People's attitudes towards the government were really the same. They was all true blue Englishmen and swore that the Vicky were the best queen that had ever lived, and foreigners were dirt. At the same time, nobody ever thought of paying a tax, not even a dog licence, if they were any way of dodging it. Before and after the war, Lower Binfield were a Liberal constituency. During the war, there were a by-election which the Conservatives won. I'll tell you on a grasp what they were all about. I only knew that I were a Conservative because I liked the blue streamers better than the red ones. I chiefly remember it because of a drunken man who fell on his nose on the pavement outside the George. In the general excitement, nobody took any notice of him, and he lay there for hours in the hot sun, with his blood drying round him. When it dried, it was purple. By the time the 1906 election came along, I was old enough to understand it, more or less. And this time we were a Liberal, because everybody else were a Liberal. The people chased the Conservative candidate half a mile and threw him into a pond full of duckweed. People took politics seriously in those days. They used to begin storing up rotten eggs weeks before an election. Very early in life, when the Boer War broke out, I remember the big row between Father and Uncle Ezekiel. Uncle Ezekiel had a little boot shop in one of the streets off the R Street, and also did some cobbling. They were a small business, intended to get smaller, which didn't matter greatly, because Uncle Ezekiel wasn't married. He was only an half-brother, much older than Father, 20 years older at least. And for the 15 years or so that I knew him, he always looked exactly the same. He was a fine-looking old chap, rather tall, white hair and the whitest whiskers I ever saw. White as thistledown. He had the way of slapping his leather apron and standing up very straight, a reaction from bending over the last, I suppose, after which he'd bark his opinions straight in your face, and then up with a sort of ghostly cackle. He was a real old 19th century liberal. Guy not only used to ask you what Gladstone said in '78, but could tell you the answer. One of the very few people in Lower Binfield who stuck to the same opinions all through the war. He was always denouncing Joe Chamberlain and some gang of people that he referred to as the Park Lane riffraff. I can hear him now having one of his arguments with Father. Living there for an empire, can't fling it too far for me, eh eh eh. Then Father's voice, a quiet, worried, conscientious kind of voice, coming back at him with a white man's burden and our duty to the poor blacks whom these here Boers treated something shameful. For a week or so after Uncle Ezekiel gave it out that he were a pro-Boer and a little Englander, they were hardly on speaking terms. They had another row when the atrocity story started. Father was very worried by the tales he'd heard, and he tackled Uncle Ezekiel about the little Englander. Well, no, surely he couldn't think it right. These here Boers to throw babies in the air and catch them on their bayonets, even if they were only nigger babies. But Uncle Ezekiel just laughed in his face. Father got it all wrong. It weren't the Boers who threw babies in the air, it were the British soldiers. He kept getting hold of me. It must have been about 5 to illustrate. Throw 'em up in the air and skewer 'em like frogs, I tell you. Same as him would throw this youngster here. And he'd swing me up and almost let go of me. And I had a vivid picture of myself flying through the air and landing plonk on the end of a bayonet. Father were quite different from Uncle Ezekiel. I don't know much about my grandparents. They was dead before I was born. I only know that my grandfather had been a cobbler, and late in life he married the widow of a seedsman, which was how he come to have the shop. It was a job that didn't really suit Father, though he knew the business inside and out, and were everlastingly working, except on Sunday and very occasionally on weekday evenings. I never remember him without a meal on the backs of his hands, and the lines of his face, and what was left of his hair. He'd married when he were in his 30s. He must have been nearly 40 when I would first remember him. He was a small man, a sort of grey, quiet little man, always in his shirt sleeves and white apron, always dusty looking because of the meal. He had a round head, a blunt nose, a rather bushy moustache, spectacles and butter-coloured hair, the same colour as mine, but he'd lost most of it and were always mealy. My grandfather had bettered himself a good deal by marrying the seedsman's widow, and Father had been educated at Walton Grammar School, where the farmers and the better-off tradesmen sent their sons. As Uncle Ezekiel liked to boast that he had never been to school in his life, and he taught himself to read by tallow candle after working hours. He was a much quicker-witted man than Father. He could argue with anybody. He used to quote Carlyle and Spencer by the yard. Father had a slow sort of mind. He'd never taken a book learning, as he called it, and his English weren't good. On Sunday afternoons, the only time when he really took things easy, he'd sat down by the parlour fireplace to have what he called a good read of the Sunday paper. His favourite paper were the People. Mother preferred the News of the World, which she considered had more murders in it. I can see them now, Sunday afternoon, summer of course, always summer. The smell of roast pork and greens still floating in the air. The mother on one side of the fireplace, staring off to read the latest murder, had gradually fallen asleep with her mouth open. The Father on the other side in slippers and spectacles, wiping his way slowly through yards of smudgy print. The soft feeling of summer all round you, the geranium in the window, a startling cooing somewhere, and myself under the table with a BOP, making believe the tablecloth were a tent. Afterwards, at tea, as he chewed his way through the radishes and spring onions, Father would talk in a ruminative kind of way, about the stuff he'd been reading, the fires and shipwrecks and scandals in our society. And these here new fire machines in the chap, I noticed this day turns them up in the Sunday papers about once in 3 years, were swallowed by a whale in the Red Sea and taken out 3 days later, a lard but bleached white by the whale's gastric juices. Father was always a bit sceptical of this story, of the new flying machines. Otherwise he believed everything he read. Until 1919, no one in Lower Binfield believed that human beings would ever learn to fly. The official doctrine was that if God had meant us to fly, he'd have given us wings. Uncle Ezekiel couldn't help retorting that if God has meant us to ride, he'd have given us wheels. Even he didn't believe in the new flying machines. They were only on Sunday afternoons, and perhaps on one evening a week, when he looked in at the George for an half pint. The father had turned his mind to such things. Other times he was always more or less overwhelmed by the business. Not really such a lot to do, but he seemed to be always busy, either in the loft behind the lard, struggling about with the sacks and bales, or in the kind of dusty little cubbyhole behind the counter in the shop, adding figures up in a notebook with a stump of pencil. He was a very honest man, a very obliging man, very anxious to provide good stuff and swindle nobody, which even in those days went the best way to get on in business. He would have been just the man for some small official job, postmaster for instance, a station master, the country station. He hadn't even the cheek or the enterprise to borrow the money and expand the business, or the imagination to think of a new selling line. But characteristic of him, the only streak of imagination he ever showed, the invention of a new seed mixture for caged birds, Boland's mixture it was called, and it was famous over a radius of nearly 5 miles, and really due to Uncle Ezekiel. Uncle Ezekiel were a bit of a bird fancier and had quantities of goldfinches in the dark little shop. It was his theory that caged birds lose their colour because of the lack of variation in their diet. In the yard behind the shop, Father had a tiny plot of ground in which he used to grow about 20 kinds of weed under wire netting. He used to dry them and mix their seeds with ordinary canary seed. Jackie, the bullfinch, who hung in the shop window, was supposed to be an advertisement of Boland's mixture. Certainly, unlike most bullfinches in cages, Jackie never turned black. Mother was fat ever since I remember her. No doubt it's from her that I inherit my pituitary deficiencies, whatever it is that makes you get fat. She was a largish woman, a bit taller than Father, with hair a good deal fairer than his, and a tendency to wear black dresses. Except on Sunday, I never remember her without an apron. It would be an exaggeration, but not a very big one to say. I never remember her when she wasn't cooking. When you look back over a long period, you seem to see human beings always fixed in some special place, and some characteristic attitude. It seems to you that they was always doing exactly the same thing. Where? Just as when I think of Father, I remember him always behind the counter, with his hair all mealy, adding up figures with a stump of pencil, which he moistens between his lips. And just as I remember Uncle Ezekiel, with his ghostly white whiskers, straightening himself out and slapping his leather apron. So when I think of Mother, I remember her at the kitchen table, with her forearms covered in flour, rolling out a lump of dough. I'll pause here for a second and have a quick swallow of water, because I'm feeling a little dry. You know the kind of kitchens people had in those days? A huge place, rather dark and low, with a great beam across the ceiling and a stone floor and cellars underneath. Everything enormous, so it seemed to me when I was a kid. A vast stone sink, which had no top, an iron pump, a dresser covering one wall and going right up to the ceiling, a gigantic range which burned half a ton a month and took God knows how long to blacken it. Mother at the table rolling out a huge heap of dough. Myself crawling round, messing about with bundles of firewood and lumps of coal, and 10 beetle traps, had them in all the dark corners, and they used to be baited with beer. Now and again coming up to the table to try and catch a bit of food. Mother didn't hold with eating between meals. He generally got the same answer. Go along with you now, I'm not going to have you spoiling your dinner. Your eyes are bigger than your belly. Very occasionally, however, she'd cut you off a thin strip of candied peel. I used to like to watch Mother rolling pastry. There's always a fascination in watching somebody do a job which he really understands. Watch a woman who really knows how to cook, rolling dough. She's got a peculiar, solemn, indrawn air, a satisfied kind of air, like a priestess celebrating a sacred rite. In her own mind, of course, that's exactly what it is. Mother had a thick, pink, strong forearms, which was generally mottled with flour when she was cooking. All her movements was wonderfully precise and firm. In her hands, egg whisks and mincers and rolling pins did exactly what they was meant to do. When you saw her cooking, you know that she were in a world where she belonged. One thing she really understood. Except through the Sunday papers and an occasional bit of gossip, the outside world didn't really exist for her. Though she read more easily than father, and unlike him used to read novelettes as well as newspapers, she were unbelievably ignorant. I realised this even by the time I was 10 years old. She certainly couldn't have told you whether Ireland were east or west of England. And I was doubtful whether any time up to the outbreak of the Great War she could have told you who were Prime Minister. Moreover, she hadn't the smallest wish to know such things. Later on, when I read books about eastern countries where they practiced polygamy, and secret harems where the women are locked up with black eunuchs mounting guard over them, I used to think how shocked Mother would have been if she'd heard of it. I can almost hear her voice. Well now, shutting their waves up like that, the idea. Not that she'd have known what a eunuch were. In reality, she lived her life in a space that must have been as small and almost as private as the average Zanana. Even in her own house, there were parts where she never set foot. She never went to the loft behind the yard, and very seldom into the shop. I think I ever remember her serving a customer. She wouldn't know where any of the things was kept. Until they were milled into flour, she probably didn't know the difference between wheat and oats. Why should she? The shop was father's business. It were a man's work. Even about the money side of it, she hadn't very much curiosity. Her job, a woman's work, was to look after the house, and the meals, and the laundry, and the children. She'd have had a fit if she'd been father or anyone else of the male sex trying to sew a new button on for herself. So far as the meals and so forth went, ours was one of those houses where everything goes like clockwork. Well, no, not like clockwork, which suggests something mechanical, but more like some kind of natural process. You knew that breakfast would be on the table tomorrow, in much the same way as you knew the sun would rise. All through her life, Mother went to bed at 9, got up at 5, and she had thought it vaguely wicked, sort of decadent and foreign and aristocratic, keep later hours. Though she didn't mind paying Katie summons to take Joe and me out for walks, she would never tolerate the idea of having a woman in to help with the housework. We were a firm belief that a hired woman always sweeps the dirt under the dresser. Our meals was always ready on the tick. Enormous meals, boiled beef and dumplings, roast beef and Yorkshire, boiled mutton and capers, pig's head, apple pie, spotted dog and jam roly-poly, grace before and after. The old ideas about bringing up children still held good. It was going out fast. In theory, children were still thrashed and put to bed on bread and water, and certainly he was liable to be sent away from the table if he made too much noise eating, or choked, refused something that was good for you, or answered back. In practice, there wasn't much discipline in our family. None of the two, Mother were the firmer. Father, though we were always quoting spare the rod and spoil the child, were really much too weak with us, especially Joe, who were in our case from the start. He was always going to give Joe a good argument. He used to tell us stories, which I now believe were lies, about the frightful thrashings his own father used to give him with a leather strap. Nothing ever came of it. By the time Joe was 12, he was too strong for Mother to get him across her knee, and after that there were no doing anything with him. At that time it was still thought proper for parents to say don't to their children all day long. You'd often hear a man boasting that he'd thrash the life out of his son if he caught him smoking or stealing apples, or robbing a bird's nest. In some families these thrashings actually took place. Old Lovegrove, the saddler, caught his two sons, great lumps aged 16 and 15, smoking in the garden shed, and walloped them so you could hear it all over the town. Lovegrove were a very heavy smoker. The thrashings never seemed to have any effect. All the boys stole apples, robbed birds' nests, and learned to smoke sooner or later. The idea was still knocking about that children should be treated rough. Practically everything worth doing was forbidden, in theory anyway. According to Mother, everything that a boy wants to do was dangerous. Swimming was dangerous. Climbing trees were dangerous, so was sliding, snowballing, hanging on behind carts, using catapults and spawners, and even fishing. All animals was dangerous except Naylor, the two cats, and Jackie the bullfinch. Every animal had its special recognised methods of attacking you. Horses bit, bats got in your hair, earwigs got in your ears, swans broke your legs with the blow of their wings, bulls tossed you, and snakes stung. All snakes stung, according to Mother. When I quoted the penny encyclopedia the effect that they didn't sting but bit, She only told me not to answer back. Lizards, slowworms, toads, frogs and newts also stung. All insects stung except flies and black beetles. Practically all kinds of food, except the food you had at meals, was either poisonous or bad for you. Raw potatoes was deadly poison, and so were mushrooms unless you bought them at the greengrocers. I'm going to stop there because the ads is about to come on. Lord, this one chapter is longer than I was expecting. Right then, another quick swallow of water and some thoughts. It's strange really seeing this sort of idealised past. Because obviously, I mean, it's not idealised exactly, is it? He's plenty of faults he's pointing out in it, but it's a little bit idealised in the way that, you know, you were a kid at the time and it was better. Well, I will say there's one thing here that you can see immediately shows the fallen standard of the health of wildlife in the UK. And that's that nowadays everyone says that swans will break your arm. Back in the day you get swans that break your legs, God, imagine them. Must have been great honking beasts, but nowadays, sympathetic swans barely break your arm. People say they can't even do that nowadays sometimes. Sad thing, really, sad thing. What is the world coming to? It's strange, really. He's doing all this reminiscing on the past, and there's this wistfulness about it that almost makes you think that when he was talking about it, when he was in the street, he was sort of wistful about it, reminiscing in this sort of, I don't know, longing way, but as he's describing it sort of concretely, it sounds pretty miserable in of itself, doesn't it, right? It's all defined by like before and after the war. His father's working all hours of the day. His mother doesn't have anything going on except the housework and wouldn't know after the war if she did. I mean, God knows. And the childhood nurse he had wound up knocked up and had her life ruined and not 50, 27, all this stuff. It's strange. It's like it is. It feels like it is reminiscing about the past in a fond manner, but it is a bloody miserable past as well. The whole thing feels rather grim. Rather grim indeed. Makes you wonder why it bothers reminiscing about it, doesn't it? Still. What else is there to say? It's very readable, I will say, this book. It might just be that it's in a dialect that's similar to sort of my native dialect, so I'm feeling quite comfortable with it. But there's some also good stuff in the way that certain characters talk, but you get a sense of their voice as well, quite well. It feels very natural compared to even a lot of other books that I've read that have been, you know, easy and doable. Again, that might be personal bias. This is written in marvellous, basically, so I can't really proclaim to be so totally objective about it. And yeah, ads is about to end again, so we'll have another quick swallow of water. There we are. And that's the advert's over, so let's press on. Raw potatoes was deadly poisoning, and so was mushrooms unless you bought them from the greengrocers. Raw gooseberries gave you colic, and raw raspberries gave you a skin rash. If you had a bath after a meal, you died of cramp, and if you cut yourself between the thumb and forefinger, you got lockjaw. And if you washed your hands in the water eggs was boiling, you got warts. Nearly everything in the shop was poisonous, which is why Mother had put the gate in the doorway. Cow cake were poisonous, and so were chicken corn, so were mustard seed and cars with poultry spices. Sweets was bad for you, and eating between meals was bad for you. But curiously enough, there were certain kinds of eating between meals that Mother was allowed. When she were making plum jam, she used to let us eat the syrupy stuff that was skimmed off the top. We used to gorge ourselves with it till we were sick. But nearly everything in the world were either dangerous or poisonous. There were certain things that had mysterious virtues. Raw onions was a cure for almost everything. A stocking tied around your neck was a cure for a sore throat. Sulphur in a dog's drinking water acted as a tonic. An old nailer's bowl behind the back door always had a lump of sulphur in it. We stayed there year after year, never dissolving. We used to have tea at 6. By 4, Mother had generally finished the housework. Between 4 and 6, she used to have a quiet cup of tea and read her paper, as she called it. As a matter of fact, she didn't often read the newspaper, except on Sundays. The weekday papers only had the day's news, and it were only occasionally there were a murder. But the editors of the Sunday papers had grasped that people don't really mind whether their murders are up to date. And when there were no murder on hand, they'd hash up an old one, sometimes going as far back as Dr. Palmer and Mrs. Manning. I think Mother thought of the world outside I'd been in chiefly as a place where murders was committed. Murders had a terrible fascination for her, because as she often said, you just don't know how people could be so wicked. Cutting their wives' throats, burying their fathers under cement floors, throwing babies down wells. How can anyone do such things? The Jack the Ripper scare had happened about the time when Father and Mother were married, and the big wooden shutters we used to draw over the shop windows every night dated from them. Shutters for shop windows was going out. Most of the shops in the High Street didn't have them. Mother felt safer behind them. All along, she said, she'd had a dreadful feeling that Jack the Ripper were hiding in Lord Binfield. The Crippen case, about years later when they were almost grown up, upset her badly. I can hear her voice now. Cutting his poor wife up and burying her in the coal cellar, the idea. What would I do to that man if I get hold of him? And curiously enough, when she thought of the dreadful wickedness of the little American doctor who dismembered his wife, made a very neat job of it by taking all the bones out and chucking the head into the sea, if I remember rightly, the tears actually come into her eyes. What she mostly read on weekdays was Hilda's Own Companion. In those days it were part of the regular furnishing of any home like ours. As a matter of fact, it still exists. It has been a bit crowded out by the more streamlined women's papers that have come up since the war. I had a look at a copy only the other day. It's changed, but it's but less than most things. There's still the same enormous serial stories that go on for 6 months, and it all comes right in the end with orange blossoms to follow. The same household hints, and the same ads for sewing machines and remedies for bad legs. It's chiefly the print and the illustrations that have changed. In those days, the heroine had to look like an egg timer, and now she looks like a cylinder. Mother were a slow reader, and believed in getting her threepenny worth on the Hilda's Own Companion. Sitting in the old yellow armchair beside the hearth, with her feet in the iron fender, and a little pot of strong tea stewing on the hob, she'd work her way steadily from cover to cover, right through the serial. Then two short stories, then household hints, then ads. The Zambuk, and the answer to correspondence. Hilda's Own Companion generally lasted her the week out, and some weeks she didn't even finish it. Sometimes the heat of the fire or the buzzing of the bluebottles on summer afternoons would send her off in a doze. At about 5:45 she'd wake up with a tremendous start, glance at the clock on the mantelpiece, and then get into a stew because tea was going to be late. Tea were never late. In those days, till 1909 to be exact, Father could still afford an errand boy. He used to leave the shop to him and come in to tea with the back of his hand all mealy. Then Mother would stop cutting slices of bread for a moment and say, "If you'll give us grace, Father." And Father, while we all bent our heads to our chest, reverently, "What we're about to receive, Lord, make us truly thankful, Amen." Later on, when Joe were a bit over, it would be, you give us grace today, Joe," and Joe would pipe it out. Mother never said grace. It had to be someone of the male sex. There was always bottles buzzing about on summer afternoons. Ours wasn't a sanitary house. Precious few houses in Lower Binfield were, I suppose. I suppose the town must have contained at least 500 houses. There certainly can't have been more than 10 with bathrooms, and 50 with what we should now describe as a WC. In summer, our backyard always smelt of dustbins, and all houses had insects in them. We had black beetles in the wainscoting, and crickets somewhere between the kitchen range. Besides, of course, the mealworms in the shop. In those days, even an house-proud woman like Mother didn't see anything to object to in black beetles. It was as much a part of the kitchen as the dresser, a rolling pin. But there were insects and insects. The house in the bad street, beyond the brewery, where Katie Simmons lived, was overrun by bugs. Mother or any of the shopkeepers' wives would have died of shame if they'd had bugs in the house. In fact, it was considered proper to say that you didn't even know of a bug by sight. The great blue flies used to come sailing into the larder and sit longingly on the wire covers over the meat. Dread the flies, people used to say. But the flies was an act of God, and apart from the meat covers and fly papers, you couldn't do much about them. I said a little while back, the first thing I remember is the smell of samphire. The smell of dustbins is also a pretty early memory. When I think of Mother's kitchen, the stone floor and the beetle traps, and the steel fender in the black lead range, I always seem to hear the blueballs buzzing and smell the dustbin, and also old Naylor, who carried a pretty powerful smell of dog. And God knows there are worse smells and sounds. Which would you sooner listen to? A blue bottle or a bombing plane? That's the end of chapter 2. I think we'll end the chapter reading there for the night. That's my Christ, that's I dreamt about picking out 2 sort of really bleak readings in a row, but God, man, I mean that's what you're reminiscing about, you know, that's the childhood you're reminiscing of, the sort of insects and that, and I mean, Christ. I live pretty rough as a rat, but I'm aware that my situation is bad. I don't have any pretensions to being anything more than that. I just don't get why you would... If you're so miserable in the day-to-day and you're looking back and it's so miserable, why do you even... What's even the point of existing at all? Quite my point indeed. Why do you go on with it? It baffles me, you know? I come here not to hurt you. I have no malice to you in my heart. All I want is what's best for all of us. An ending. Today the rat has sat here and read to you a story of a man so basic and ordinary and so terribly miserable. And yet he persists. He and his neighbours, all proud patriots, all proud of the lives they live, and they are all miserable and meaningless and worthless. Everything is. Nothing should be. Nothing should be at all. And that's all I want for you, isn't it? Just nothing. Just sweet nothing. Just nothing and nothing and nothing, 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 nothing. No, what was I talking about? Why am I down here again? Sorry, I meant to go back over the chilling screen, the bed. Oh, my head's out of it today. God. Oof. Yeah, that's, like I said, quite a depressing choice, but it's an interesting one too. I mean, like, the little sort of country life stuff is interesting in the sort of way, like, it's a historical story, right, you know? You okay, Blake? That's a bit of an odd email to be sending. But yeah, it's historical in a way, you know, seeing how people used to live. And sure, the bugs and stuff seem a bit rough by modern standards, but you know. I mean, that's the good thing, right? That's something to look up to, right? Things was worse in the ways before, you know? I mean, he talks about it too. No one had a WC, no one had a bathroom. Things do get better. Same as they get worse. Some things is always the same, you know? Yeah. It's about seeing things how they are, you know? Nothing's good particularly at the moment, nothing's bad particularly at the moment. It's just stuff that happens. You just have to get by it, that's what life is. And sometimes it's a bit bleak when you think about it. But when you're not thinking about it, most of the time it's very pleasant indeed. Most of the time when you're not thinking about it. Sometimes nowadays my not thinking about it feels a bit odd when I'm not thinking about anything. Not thinking. Yeah. Most of the time it's fine, you just gotta not focus on the negatives. Anyhow, yeah, sorry about things being a bit weird today. I hope you enjoyed the book. I think it's not a happy one, but it's quite a good one, I thought. And yeah, just sorry for all the my sort of been a bit dozy today and maybe drifting off a bit during the poetry and the old ghost message thing. Like, I don't know, maybe Lamps messed about with things. I'm just it's a shame, really. It's a good book, and I think I'd go longer if I wasn't so kind of all over the place. But yeah, well, yeah, I'm sure things is fine though. I hope you've enjoyed it. Oh, thank you, Sad Night. It's nice to know people find it comforting there. But yeah, I do hope you've enjoyed the reading. I don't. I'm not exactly sure about tomorrow. I know Play's got her big 24-hour stream planned in the coming days. I'm glad. So, and that's going to be going on. I'll probably be hanging around that a fair bit. But depending on when she plans to start, I might get a short thing in tomorrow. Maybe a bit more of this, maybe something else. But yeah, either way, you should be checking that out tomorrow. Yeah. Yes. I forget whether it was a reward for the charity thing, like the charity event that happened, or for the birthday event that happened, or for the fun. Like, there's actually Play keeps doing things, and there are always like more things that are coming to you. Yeah, from charity. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so I hope you all enjoyed that. Do be sure to check out Play's upcoming 24-hour stream, which starting tomorrow evening, I believe. I don't think times is firm yet, but yeah, keep an eye out. It's very weird for me to say go join Plague's Discord, but go do that. I've really got to get one of myself one of these days. I just got to get around to setting up. But yeah. If I seem to be losing time these days, I keep meaning to get it done. Anyway, but yeah. So, thank you all for being here, though, as always. Hope you have a lovely day. Let's see if anyone's alive to read that. Blimey. How do I? Yeah, let's read out to Limey. So we'll read out to her. So yeah, I do hope you enjoyed. I do really appreciate it. Do listen to Abbe. Abbe is always very wise. Knows what she's talking about. You do have a good rest of your evening. I hope you have a lovely time, whatever it is for you. And as always, ta-ra.